She smiles, laughs, touches your arm, and then says, "I'm just friendly." But something in your gut tells you that explanation doesn't cover what's really happening. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say isn't meant to make you paranoid. It's meant to make you precise. There is a subtle difference between friendliness and interest, and most men are never taught how to see it. They're taught to either overreact or completely ignore it. And both mistakes cost you respect, attraction, and clarity. When a woman is truly just friendly, her energy is evenly distributed. She treats you the same way she treats the waiter, her co-worker, her cousin, and the guy she barely tolerates. There's warmth, but it's broad. Nothing narrows, nothing focuses. But when you notice that her friendliness sharpens around you, when it becomes selective, that's when something else is at play. Pay attention to consistency. A woman who is just friendly is friendly on her schedule, not yours. She doesn't orbit your presence. She doesn't subtly adjust her behavior when you enter the room. But when a woman's tone softens only with you, when her posture opens only around you, when her attention lingers longer than necessary, that's not an accident. That's instinct. Here's the truth most men never hear. Women don't test with words first. They test with energy. Before she ever decides whether you're a potential partner, she's already watching how you respond to emotional proximity. Do you rush toward it? Do you freeze? Do you try to lock it down with labels and questions? Or do you stay grounded, calm, and unaffected? When she's just friendly, but keeps circling back to you, what she's really asking is not, "Do you like me?" It's, "Do you understand what's happening here without me spelling it out?" And this is where men either rise or disqualify themselves. A man who panics tries to convert friendliness into certainty. He asks for clarity too soon. He pushes for definitions. He tries to turn energy into contracts. And in doing so, he reveals insecurity. Not because he wants her, but because he needs her reaction to feel safe. A man who is unaware misses the signal entirely. He treats subtle interest like background noise. He over-explains. He overshares. He becomes emotionally convenient. And slowly, without realizing it, he trains her nervous system to experience him as safe but non-threatening, comfortable but not compelling. The man who understands female psychology does neither. He doesn't chase the friendliness, he observes it. He doesn't inflate it in his mind, and he doesn't dismiss it out of fear of being wrong. He stays exactly where he is, centered, self-directed, and emotionally steady. And that steadiness does something powerful. It creates contrast. Women are not drawn to men who react. They are drawn to men who register, who notice without grasping, who understand that attraction often begins as ambiguity, not certainty. If her friendliness increases when you pull back slightly, not cold, not distant, just less available, that's information. If she becomes more expressive when you stop over-investing, that's information. And if she subtly seeks your validation after you stop offering it freely, that's information too. This isn't about games, it's about self-respect. When you don't collapse into her friendliness, you give her space to feel her own curiosity. And curiosity is the doorway to attraction. Most men ruin that doorway by trying to force it open. Remember this, a woman who is truly just friendly doesn't notice when you stop leaning in. A woman who isn't will. Here's where it gets uncomfortable, but necessary. A woman who says she's just friendly while behaving differently around you is often navigating an internal contradiction. And no, that doesn't mean she's manipulative. It means she's human. Attraction doesn't begin as a decision. It begins as a sensation. A shift in her nervous system, a slight increase in awareness when you speak, a subtle pause before she responds. Before logic ever gets involved, her body already knows something is different. And when that sensation conflicts with her current identity, relationship status, or emotional safety, she labels it as friendliness to keep herself grounded. Women don't lie to men first. They lie to themselves first. So when she insists it's nothing, what she's really saying is, "I haven't decided what this is allowed to become." And the way you behave in that undecided space determines everything. Most men think attraction grows when they add pressure, when they increase attention, availability, reassurance. But pressure doesn't create desire, it creates resistance, especially when she's already feeling something she doesn't fully understand yet. Notice this. When a woman is purely friendly, she doesn't monitor your reactions. She doesn't scan your face after she says something playful. She doesn't adjust her behavior based on whether you noticed her effort. But when there's something more beneath the surface, she becomes subtly aware of how you perceive her. She watches without staring. She checks without asking. That's not friendliness, that's calibration. And here's the mistake that costs men the most: trying to prove they're different. Men start performing, being extra kind, extra supportive, extra present. They think consistency will be rewarded. But consistency without polarity becomes predictability. And predictability doesn't create emotional tension, it dissolves it. Female attraction needs contrast, not chaos, not games. Contrast. When you treat her friendliness as expected, not special, something interesting happens. You remove the reward she hasn't consciously earned yet, and that creates a small emotional imbalance. Suddenly, she feels more than you do. Suddenly, she's the one leaning in slightly. This is where men get scared and overcorrect. They sense the shift and rush to stabilize it. They reassure her. They soften. They go back to being overly available. And the imbalance disappears, along with the attraction. A grounded man doesn't rush to fix emotional imbalance. He allows it because he understands that attraction often lives in that space of uncertainty. Let me be clear, this is not about ignoring her or acting cold. Coldness signals emotional unavailability. Groundedness signals self-sufficiency. There's a difference, and women feel it immediately. A grounded man still speaks warmly, still listens, still engages, but his life doesn't pause for her attention. His mood doesn't rise and fall based on her tone. His sense of self doesn't hinge on her interest becoming something more. And that independence is what transforms just friendly into curiosity and curiosity into desire. Because now, instead of you trying to earn her interest, she's trying to understand yours. She starts wondering why you didn't jump, why you didn't chase, why you didn't need clarity right away. And that wondering activates imagination. And imagination is where attraction quietly grows. This is the truth no one teaches men. Women don't fall for men who want them most. They fall for men who want their lives most and invite women into it, instead of orbiting theirs. When you stop asking, "What does her friendliness mean?" and start asking, "How do I want to show up regardless?" everything shifts. Because confidence isn't loud, it's calm, and calm is magnetic. Now pay attention, because this is where the pattern becomes unmistakable. When her friendliness turns inconsistent, it's no longer accidental, it's diagnostic. One day she's warm, open, engaged. The next day she's distant, distracted, almost neutral. Most men read this as confusion or mixed signals, but female psychology doesn't operate randomly. Inconsistency usually appears when attraction is present but unclaimed. When a woman feels nothing, she's stable. When she feels everything, she's expressive. But when she feels something she hasn't decided to allow herself, she oscillates. That push and pull isn't about controlling you, it's about regulating herself. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. Part of her enjoys how she feels around you. Another part is assessing risk, emotional risk, social risk, identity risk. And every time those parts clash, her behavior shifts. Men who don't understand this start chasing clarity. They ask, "Did I do something wrong?" They overtext, they over-explain, they try to smooth the inconsistency. And in doing so, they unknowingly position themselves as emotionally dependent on her stability. That's the fastest way to neutralize attraction. A woman doesn't want to be responsible for a man's emotional balance. The moment she feels like she is, desire collapses into duty. The man who understands this does something counterintuitive. He remains unchanged. When she pulls back, he doesn't lean forward. When she warms up again, he doesn't celebrate it. He stays internally consistent, not to manipulate, but because he actually is. And that consistency becomes a mirror. Suddenly she notices that her fluctuations don't control him. Her warmth doesn't inflate him. Her distance doesn't shrink him. And that creates something rare, emotional safety paired with strength. This is where many men misunderstand female psychology. They think women want reassurance. What women want is regulation. They want to feel that if emotions rise, the man remains steady. That if tension appears, the man doesn't panic. When she's just friendly but starts testing your boundaries, interrupting your time, probing your availability, lightly challenging your decisions, that's not friendliness. That's assessment. She's asking, does this man bend under emotional pressure, or does he hold shape? A man who bends tries to keep the peace. He apologizes too quickly. He adjusts his values to maintain access. He prioritizes her comfort over his alignment. And while that may feel kind, it registers as weakness. A man who holds shape doesn't argue. He doesn't dominate. He simply doesn't abandon himself. If something doesn't work for him, he says so calmly. If a line is crossed, he addresses it without drama, and something fascinating happens when he does. Her friendliness deepens, not because she feels entertained, but because she feels oriented. Women are drawn to men who create emotional gravity. Men who don't need to convince, chase, or perform. Men whose presence feels anchored. This is why so many women say they're attracted to men who are hard to read. What they really mean is emotionally stable, predictable in character, not behavior, secure enough to allow uncertainty without trying to dominate it. When you stop trying to decode her friendliness and start focusing on your own internal posture, the dynamic flips. She becomes more expressive, more curious, more invested. Because now, instead of you wondering where you stand with her, she's wondering where she stands with you. And that question is far more powerful than any confession. Remember this: interest reveals itself not through words, but through disturbance. If your presence subtly disrupts her emotional baseline, you're no longer just friendly. And the man who understands that doesn't rush to define it. He allows it to reveal itself, naturally, inevitably, and on his terms. Here's the moment most men miss, the quiet turning point, where friendliness either dissolves or transforms into attraction. It happens when she realizes she can't place you. Human psychology, especially female psychology, is built around pattern recognition. Women are constantly mapping men into categories: safe, exciting, useful, avoidable, temporary, serious. Most men rush to make themselves easy to categorize, because certainty feels comfortable. But comfort is not the birthplace of desire. When she's just friendly, yet starts asking questions that aren't necessary, remembering details she doesn't need, or bringing up emotional topics without a clear reason, her mind is searching for a box that fits you and failing. That failure creates tension, and tension, when paired with emotional safety, becomes attraction. Notice how this works. You're present, but not predictable. Warm, but not eager. Interested, but not invested beyond reason. You don't withdraw to provoke her, and you don't advance to secure her. You simply continue being aligned with yourself. That alignment forces her to confront something unsettling. She can't control the pace or direction of the dynamic. This is where many women unconsciously escalate. She may increase compliments, not overtly, but personally. She may create moments alone with you that feel unplanned. She may become more expressive about her frustrations, her doubts, her inner world. Not because she wants you to fix them, but because she wants to see how you hold space. And here's the critical test. Does her emotional openness pull you out of your center? Men who mistake vulnerability for obligation rush in. They over-support. They start playing therapist, rescuer, emotional anchor. And in doing so, they collapse the polarity. She no longer feels tension. She feels taken care of. And while that feels nice, it doesn't feel erotic. A grounded man listens without absorbing. He empathizes without entangling. He doesn't rush to solve emotions that weren't given to him to fix. That restraint communicates something powerful. I can be close without losing myself. And that is rare. When a woman senses that closeness doesn't grant her control over you, something shifts in her perception. She becomes more aware of her behavior. She wonders how she's being seen. She notices when you pull back slightly, not in availability, but in emotional investment. That awareness is the moment friendliness starts to feel insufficient, because now she's not just enjoying your presence, she's evaluating her position in your life. This is where attraction becomes conscious. She may still say she's just friendly, not to deceive you, but to protect herself from the vulnerability of wanting more. Wanting more means risking rejection, loss of status, emotional exposure, and women are just as afraid of that as men, sometimes more. The difference is, women rarely move toward desire directly. They move indirectly, through proximity, emotion, and time. Your job is not to force clarity. Your job is to remain clear within yourself. When you don't chase reassurance, when you don't punish distance, when you don't reward inconsistency with extra effort, you send a message that doesn't need words. I value connection, but I value myself more. That message recalibrates everything. Now, instead of her friendliness being the center of the interaction, your standards become the center. And standards, quiet, lived, unannounced, are deeply attractive. This is the truth that unsettles men. Attraction grows not when you prove your value, but when you stop negotiating it. When she senses that access to you is earned through alignment, not emotion. Friendliness alone no longer satisfies her curiosity. She wants to know where she stands. And the moment she starts wondering that, the dynamic has already changed. Because the most powerful shift in any relationship is not when someone wants you, it's when they realize they might lose you, without you ever threatening to leave. Now we arrive at the truth most men feel, but rarely articulate. The moment her friendliness stops being enough for her, the dynamic reaches a silent crossroads. And what happens next depends entirely on who you've been up to this point. If you've chased, overgiven, or waited anxiously for her to choose you, the energy collapses here. Her curiosity fades, replaced by certainty, and certainty, without desire, becomes stagnation. But if you've remained grounded, if you've let her friendliness exist without feeding on it, something else emerges. Awareness. She becomes aware of the emotional space you occupy, not as a convenience, not as a backup, but as a presence that affects her. She notices that your absence changes the tone of the room, that conversations feel flatter without you, that her thoughts circle back, uninvited. This is when friendliness turns inward. She may replay moments, reread messages, wonder why you didn't push when she expected you to, why you didn't try to lock her down when the door was slightly open, why you seemed interested but not dependent. And here's the key. Attraction intensifies when a woman feels she is choosing, not being chosen. By not forcing the moment, you give her ownership of her desire. This is also where many men sabotage themselves by finally making a move out of fear. They confess, they demand clarity, they rush to capitalize on momentum, and in doing so, they steal the very agency that was making her drawn to them. A man who understands timing doesn't accelerate emotional gravity, he allows it to pull naturally. If something more is meant to happen, it will emerge through alignment, not pressure, through shared moments that feel inevitable, not engineered. And if it doesn't happen, then her friendliness was never the point. Here's the hardest truth to accept, but the most liberating one. Not every spark is meant to become a fire. Some exist to test whether you'll abandon yourself chasing warmth or remain whole in its presence. The man who wins doesn't win the woman, he wins himself. When you stop needing friendliness to become attraction, you stop bleeding energy, you become selective, you become calm, you become the kind of man whose presence feels complete with or without validation. And paradoxically, that's when women feel safest desiring you, because desire grows where there is freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to approach, freedom to pull back without punishment. If she's truly just friendly, your groundedness won't change her. And that's fine. You'll walk away intact, self-respecting, unconfused. But if there's something more, she'll feel it intensify the moment she realizes she can't control it. That's when friendliness becomes effort, attention becomes intentional, and words begin to align with behavior without you asking. So stop asking what her friendliness means. Ask yourself this instead. Are you acting from self-respect or from hope? Because women don't respond to hope, they respond to presence. And presence is built when a man knows who he is, what he wants, and what he refuses to beg for. Let me leave you with a question worth answering honestly, because your answer reveals everything. Self-respect, Tex emotional control, do need for validation, equal sign? Tell me your answer in the comments. If this video made you see things differently, like it, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs to hear this before he mistakes friendliness for something it was never meant to be.